word, Ty, that you keep using?
Unlimited. I'm unlimited, man. I don't play in a band, and I don't have any wit. Is what I roll with. I sleep very good at night because of that attitude. Holy smokes!
It feels good, man. It feels good, right? Yo, I'm in the light at the end of the tunnel. Paper stacks, yeah, I got them in the bundles. Harry Potter breaking bread with the muggles. They said I wouldn't make it. Now they looking puzzled. They said I wouldn't take it. How to go on hustle.
All right, Miss Lindsay, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Ty, are you ready?
Fire in the hole, man. Yeah.
I'm out. Tyler, who are we sitting down and taking a timeout with today?
Our whistles are getting more powerful by the episode, man. That one really rung my left ear. But ladies and gentlemen, up in the 585-315 and 716, and you lovely people outside in sunny DFW, we have Lindsay Gozzi-Theobald, the president and CEO of East House up there in Ra-Cha-Cha. Lindsay, thanks for being on the episode with us. I don't know what episode it is. We're north of 100 now. Wow. And I wanted to fire off and ask you, if you could be any movie character of all time, who would you be and why?
Oh, that's a tough one. I thought these were softballs. Movie character, I think I would be Wednesday Addams because she's just a little bit eclectic, a little bit odd, and people will know she means business.
Oh, I feel like you could write a song about that, Lindsay. That was kind of grooving right there. A little bit eclectic, a little bit odd. Okay.
Speaking of writing music, Lindsay, if you could pick up a instrument tomorrow and be an expert in it, what instrument are you picking up?
I have no musical ability, but my son plays the bari sax, so I would try to learn that so that we could jam together.
Oh yeah. See, I'm a sucker for a saxophone, Ty. I always tell you the brass is what pulls me into jazz music today, and also there's no words in jazz, so I don't have to bother with trying to understand what the person's trying to say. I could just enjoy the music.
Okay, the more brass, the merrier on my end, right? Anytime I see more brass, it never goes downhill in my experience.
Right.
You know, but Lindsay, if I was flying up there today to meet you and Kev, where are you taking us out to lunch today?
Gatehouse. That's my favorite.
What burger do you get?
I don't usually get the burger. I always get the chicken tenders because I think they're the best in Rochester.
Wow. I'm making a note of that because I love chicken tenders, and not a lot of people order those on the menus unless you're under 10, but I usually get those, and then I fear no judgment anymore.
So good. But they also just changed the menu. So they used to have the buffalo ones with like a mac and cheese, like a cheese fondue. Now I think they're like an Asian flavor now. So
okay. All right.
Both are good.
All right. Ooh. Lindsay, if you had to write an autobiography, what would the title be?
Living the dream.
Love that. And if you were to have your own talk show hosts, a late night show, do you have a name in mind for your late night show, and who would be your first guest?
Don't know that have a name. I think Jimmy Fallon would be my first guest.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Because I would be nervous and he would put me at ease, and he's also silly. So I would just learn from him to get through the first show. But I don't know what I would call it yet.
He travels through Rochester from time to time, so I hear, out in Fairport. I've nenever bumped into him, but I have a few friends that have, and said he's pretty down to earth as well. And knows how to have a good time is what I hear.
Next time someone sees him, let him know that we're interested in a talk show with him as the first guest.
Absolutely. And he'll be our first guest. We'll put him on the seat.
And Lindsay, are you from Rochester originally?
No, I'm from Syracuse. Yeah, I went to college here, moved back home, and then came back.
Did you go? You went to RIT, moved home, and came back? Because I was going to ask you. So are you in Rochester now? Correct.
Yep.
So I gotta ask, being an out of towner, this is my favorite question to ask Rochesterians. Are you an East Sider or a West Sider?
I am a West Sider, and to make it worse, when I moved here, I was a 315er, and so I did change my cell phone to a 585. So now I feel like I'm kind of a Rochesterian, but I do live on the West Side.
Yeah, which we do have running water as well. It may amaze most people, but
right.
We also have every chain imaginable, which is, you can't go wrong if you like chain restaurants. All right, Lindsay, last funny question from me, at least, before we get into it. But if there was one book that you would recommend to the world that they absolutely had to read, what book recommendation would you give?
I will say, I think for anyone in business, I would read Jim Comey's book, A Higher Loyalty. It's the best leadership book I think I've ever read, and I've read it probably 5 times.
All right.
For
What was your
pleasure,
key takeaway? Yeah. What now that you've read it 5 times, you've read it cover to cover. What's your key takeaway? Like what really stuck out to you comparing it to other leadership books?
I think it's just the pressure of the politics in his role and knowing that even when you make the right decision, it can still be absolutely the wrong decision. And I think from the vantage point of leadership, like he's graceful under pressure and really lost his job for political reasons.
Hmm.
And so even when you're right, you can still be wrong.
Yeah. What a great model.
I love the word grace and graceful. It just calms me down. I never remember that word until somebody says it. And another one is harmony for me. I'm like, oh, I need some of that.
I love it.
like a lot, just more frequent, not maybe a lot, but well, heck, Lindsay, I wanted to start your career out here. I need to know, who were you? Well, what were you like at Solvay High School?
Let's see. It probably wasn't all that different than I am today. A little bit more, I think, bold. I was an athlete. I was the senior class president. I was on the yearbook club committee. I was involved in a lot of things, but it was a small high school. So I only graduated with 100 and maybe 30 people. So
where did you find the time? Yeah, that is, you had more hours in the day than most, even back then, Lindsay. Your time management skills were really good. I'm sure that's still a skill and strength of yours today, being the CEO and president over there at East House. Did you ever, like, what did you want to be when you grew up? Like, do you remember that girl back at Solvay High School? Like, what was your future vision for your life at that point?
I was going to be a lawyer.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I went to RIT for criminal justice, and it was because it was the more sensible major than political science. That way, if I changed my mind, I had a degree I could use. Turns out, good thing I did that. I was going to be a lawyer, and I have lawyers in my family that I looked up to, and so that was my career goal. And then I got to RIT and kind of fell in love with forensic psychology. And so I was going to do some sort of a blend with forensic legal work. And then I graduated and did none of those things and ended up moving back home and got a job in insurance. And that kind of kicked off a very unpredictable career that you probably couldn't recreate if you tried.
Yeah. Well, it tells you who's actually ultimately driving that vehicle. Because for a long time, I look back at my career, I'm like, yeah, degree in biology, and somehow finds my way into. Yeah, I thought I was in control, but I don't think I was at all. But to your point, it's like we kept making these decisions and going through these experiences, not really knowing what we were meant to learn. But now when I look backwards, it's like, oh, that's exactly why I went through that experience, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent at the time. What type of law were you going to practice? Like, what really interested you, like within the legal profession itself?
I don't even know that I knew then. I just knew that my aunt was a lawyer, so I wanted to be a lawyer. Mm-hmm. And I think as I started to learn more about forensic psychology, which I'm dating myself a bit, but it was a relatively new field at that time. And so I'm like, there's something I could do with this. Do I want to be a criminal defense lawyer? What do I want to do? And, then life took a different turn and I ended up in insurance.
And now you're president and CEO.
Correct.
Yeah. The crooked mile
you
journey.
You can see the path, right?
Yeah. We think we know.
Some research on you, Lindsay, and I was like, what is going on here? This is versatile. I bet she's ambidextrous at this point. And I was going to ask about the lawyer thing. Did A Time to Kill want you to be a lawyer too when that movie came out? That's the only time I wanted to be a lawyer ever in my life.
I mean, it's kind of an amazing movie.
Yeah.
I think it validated my potential future career choice, but life had other plans. I went into insurance, and then I got more into forensics in terms of accounting, and got a master's degree in white collar crime. And so I ended up in Rochester because the Bonadio Group relocated me here because they were looking for someone that could do forensic auditing. Which wasn't part of my plan, of course, but here I am in Rochester so many years later.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, so out of your slew of a journey, we'll call it, a big adventure, which one of these roles and where were you when you had the thought in your mind or in your heart that you were going to be a CEO and president someday?
I never had that thought. Not once did I ever grow up and say, I want to be a CEO. Not once did I ever imagine myself in this seat. I worked for Catholic Family Center for 10 years, and I was the chief compliance officer. And it was such an amazing job, really stressful, but it was exactly who I was meant to be for that point in time. And I sort of knew that there had to be something else, because at that point in time, the compliance world was shifting a bit, and ironically, many compliance officers are now lawyers. And I'm like, I am too young I'm too old to go back to law school and too young to be phased out of my career because I don't have a degree as a lawyer. And so I'm like, there must be something else. Well, my son had grown, and I decided to go back to the for-profit world because I thought that was appropriate. He was old enough and I could do that. So I went to work for L3 Harris, and I was the ethics and compliance manager for the business segment that's headquartered here. And great job. Thought it was everything I wanted. And then something was missing, but I didn't really understand what. And honestly, I thought something was wrong with me. Like, this is everything I always wanted. It's cushy 40-hour week. I can travel the world. I could do all these things. It's compliance. And so I went to a coach who said, yeah, I think you belong in nonprofit. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I just left my job. Like, what do you mean? Mm-hmm. And so I was doing consulting because Harris had summer hours, and I knew that my skills were one that nonprofits could benefit from, because I've been blessed to have companies invest in me from a skills perspective, but they couldn't necessarily afford on a full-time basis. So I started my own consulting business. One of my clients had a little bit of regulatory trouble, so they asked me to write a plan of corrective action, which I did. And then they asked if I'd ever consider being a chief operating officer. And I'm like, I could do that. I'm a good number two. I'm a really good number two. I'd like to make other people shine. I'm a fixer. This is perfect. So I went to Prime Care and I was their chief operating officer I was only there a short period of time. My boss went out on leave, and I ended up in the interim CEO role, which I wasn't planning on. I really liked being a CEO. And then there was this thing in another continent called COVID. And at the time, we were going through a merger. So I was doing the due diligence. And I remember saying, like, we should talk about this COVID thing, but it's probably like Ebola. It's never going to make it here. And then boom, the merger closed on the day that the state shut down. And so I was the interim CEO. They offered me that opportunity, and it wasn't one that I was interested in. And so I ended up leaving, and I went to the Villa of Hope to be the chief program officer. And I'd never done behavioral health services as the program person. So I was there and committed to building great programs for our community and doing really cool work. And out of the blue one day, I got a call from my now compliance officer at East House, who worked for me about 15 years ago at Catholic Family Center, and said, hey, do you want to be my boss again? And I laughed and said, usually if you did that once, you wouldn't willingly choose it again. But you know what? I'm good where I am. I'm not really looking to be the CEO. And he said to me, do you remember when I came to East House 10 years ago, you said to me, East House is an amazing organization. If the CEO role ever becomes available, think of me. And I go,
Wow.
I did. I didn't remember it. And then as he said it, I was like, oh my God, I kind of do remember this. So I was like, okay, I will just have a conversation. And I had the conversation and here we are. So it wasn't something I set out to do, but clearly the universe had other plans.
Yeah, talk about the universal, like I just, for you to, and then for you to forget and him to remember just is, that's so
It's
cool.
wild.
What
Yeah.
is like, so, and Tyler and I would say this all the time, those that become leaders or the executives or chief executive officers or presidents, right? Those that didn't want the position usually make out the best. Because it's not a title that they sought out. And so from your perspective, having these myriad of opportunities and to learn, what was the greatest lesson that you needed to learn to become the number one?
I think I don't think there's one like defining moment. I think the most important lesson of my entire life was to follow your passion, right? And I didn't, and it took me on a different journey, but it also led me right back to what I belong doing, and that's making a difference to the lives of the people we serve. I also think that my old boss at Catholic Family Center said to me once from a piece of advice, she said, you know, Lindsay, there are reasons and there are results. Know the difference. And at the time, I thought, I don't know what she's talking about or what this even means. And then one day I was working through something in another job and it hit me and I was like, I get it now. And so I think those are the two most important things that I take with me, right? You can have the best intentions in the world and you can have reasons why things didn't happen, but those aren't the things people remember you for. The things people remember you for are the results you delivered, the changes you've made, the impact that you've created.
And I love your focus on passion and impact, and a lot of people sit back and I think there are in this constant search of something. For you even to go back into your consciousness and know something was missing when you were at L3 Harris, I think that's you being in the present, right? And the power of now, as Tyler and I just got done reading together, but really understanding, right, what is missing, and then knowing enough to want to go down that journey of discovery to figure out what was missing. And that's where I think a lot of people aren't really sure when we say the word passion. It's like it's this foreign word that most people don't understand, or it's like that's for somebody else, that's not for me. When did you identify, I guess, your passion to serve others and make a difference in the community?
Probably with the career coach, because I don't think I understood what I was going through. I am a person that's high functioning. I work a lot. I need to be busy all the time and I need a million hats to juggle. And when I was in the role that I thought was my dream job, I was working 40 hours and I had balance, and I don't know what that says about me, but it was like something I wasn't comfortable with. But I thought, well, maybe this is what it is. And so I think it was going through an assessment with her. And quite honestly, she looked me dead in the face and said, you're in the wrong business. Your personality doesn't even align with a compliance person anymore. And I almost fell off my chair. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, it can't be. It's too late for that. I left my job that I loved. Like, what do I do now? But I also think a piece of that was like, I'm willing to take risks. And I'm willing to, sometimes you leave at the height of things, right? You go out on the high note. And so, I mean, I left CFC on the high note. But I remember thinking, why did I go? Well, what was this change? And I have no regrets for any of the decisions that I made. But I also think it certainly makes you look at the next opportunity or the next risk of, well, leaving there was the hardest thing I ever had to do. What do I have to lose?
Yep.
If this doesn't work out, I'll find something else.
Yeah.
And so I think when you find the thing, whatever the thing is, it just feels right. And honestly, I went with my gut. I wasn't looking for a CEO job. I was like, these people are great. This is a great organization. I can't forget now the conversation I had so many years ago with Scott. I should do this. And what do I have to lose? And here I am.
It seems like you just totally shed that element of fear that motivates most people, whether to stay, right, or to go ultimately. But I just heard that in your voice, that what do you have to lose? I mean, the power of action, as Tyler says, without really thinking about the result or needing to know the outcome, but just doing. I think that's a powerful takeaway. I really appreciate you sharing that. And knowing too is that we go through these different seasons of our life. For that coach to tell you this is no longer in alignment with your personality, I think it's just being cognizantly aware that we are changing. We are adapting based off of our experiences, and sometimes the season of our life where we find ourselves today is no longer serving us and scratching that purpose or that passion bucket. So thanks for that, Lindsay. That was awesome.
Sure.
Lindsay, do you feel like people had a different level of respect for you leaving on a high note? Like Kevin and I just sort of went through the same thing, and I still feel a little weird going out kind of like on top. But did you get a sense of, or even for yourself, like Kevin just mentioned, like all fear has to kind of be gone if you're leaving on top of the mountain, I would think.
I don't know. I mean, I leaving CFC was like, I cried. I gave 6 weeks notice and probably cried every single day. It was the hardest decision I ever had to make, but I also knew it was time, and it wasn't easy, and I was afraid, but fear holds you back. So so you can stay in a situation and be afraid and not do anything differently. And it's kind of what I likened it, almost cancer research, right? Like you're repeatedly running your head into a brick wall until you finally, that one day, you found the cure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of think of life that way as, well, you can stay where you are, but you'll never know if you could fulfill your dream if you didn't try. And did I have days where I wanted to go back and, oh my God, I loved CFC. I had the best colleagues, the best boss, but it brought me on a different journey, and it really set me up for a different phase of my life that I didn't even see coming. I was a vice president. I think I was early 30s at the time. So it set me up for a path that I didn't see coming. And I think honestly, taking the risk of, if this isn't the thing, and there's been several jobs along my career that I've been like, I don't love this. This isn't really for me, but it always leads you somewhere else. If I didn't take the chance on Prime Care, I would never have had interim CEO experience, would have never had merger and acquisition experience. And so I think I literally sometimes think, as wild as this sounds, like the universe kind of has other plans for you and you can try to control it, but then nothing changes. Or you just throw your hands up and go, why not? It'll work itself out someday.
And it's like ditching that blueprint that you always saw, it's like,
Yeah.
are you willing to come off script? Back to the whole, what character would you be in a movie? Some people are so set in stone that this is what I've always envisioned since I was a little boy or a little girl. And if it wasn't aligning with this, I wasn't going to accept it. And ultimately, I think that safety zone or the comfort zone becomes their prison to that point. I know I was living in that and in this constant search of something, but ultimately fear, guilt, shame, and worry and doubt were what was keeping me in that warm, comfy nest. So I thought, but was I really living? I can't answer that. I don't think so. I think I was just surviving at that point. I was definitely not thriving. When you think about leadership today and what you've learned and being as young as you are, what are some of your keys to success for leadership today? You mentioned the pandemic. I'm sure now you're kind of seeing the before being the interim CEO, and then now another CEO on the other side of the pandemic. What has changed in your opinion? What have you noticed the clear differences as an employer, as a leader of other individuals and humans today? What have you noticed as some of the clear differences before and after?
I think the workforce has changed substantially. I think we have a younger workforce. I think I read a stat, and I don't remember it off the top of my head, but a majority of boomers retired as a result of or during COVID because life was just hard. And I think they were close enough to say, I don't need this. I'm good. I've planned. I've done my thing. So the workforce is younger. I think the availability of remote work at that time did change the workforce. I think that a lot of folks thought it would change the workforce permanently, and now it's kind of boomeranging back to more in person again. So I think those have changed. I think from a nonprofit perspective, our funders kind of were a little bit they were more flexible then. Now they're starting to, firm up again. So I think it feels like a full circle moment because outside of the workforce being a lot younger than it was, and I don't know how, I don't know that I aged, but, you kind of look at the world a little bit differently, but it also kind of feels like a full circle, like it feels normal again. And COVID is really more of a flu-like thing. East House bounced back quickly and very strong from COVID, but residential's tough, right? COVID was tough on residential providers. But I do think it was the workforce. And I think from a employee perspective, the world outside of us has changed as well, right? Like inflation is up. It's really difficult to survive in a time where you couldn't go anywhere. So you made the most at home and you got to enjoy the grass and the sun. And there weren't as many demands because you couldn't leave your house. I think now the work is hard. COVID had a lot of negative impacts on behavioral health, right? Mental health and substance use, domestic violence, all of those critically important things in our community. There's still ripple effects. And I think that and I always say this here, the people that take care of our people are dealing with a lot of their own symptoms of COVID, right? And trying to come out of it themselves as employees, as board members, as coworkers, as peers. It's still hard because it's not necessarily COVID, but it's all of the other things that COVID brought that make it a different world, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you've probably it's on more emotional intelligence and understanding, right, of that person outside of work. And yeah, the behaviors that we saw, I think, Tyler, gets me back to that book that you keep telling me to read is putting on a new pair of glasses, right? It's like same situation, same scenario, but now we're looking at it a little bit differently than we did before. So that's really cool.
Oh yeah, man. I love a new lens sometimes, man, depending on what season it's on or what season I'm living in. And Lindsay, I wanted to ask you real quick. So you've been at East House for about a little over almost 2 years, right? Mm-hmm. What was the first thing you changed over there when you walked in the door? I'm sure you gave it some grace and some time to kind of get along and build those relationships. But was there anything you changed automatically, or you had something in mind that kind of just made a dynamic impact off the go?
I made a lot of changes. I think what I told myself coming in is I wouldn't make any changes for 6 months.
I hear that all the time. Okay.
Yeah. But I'm a change person. So that's really hard. That's a lot harder to do than you think. So instead I focused my energy on strategy. And so we put together a quick and dirty strategic plan. We set the vision for 2040. So we had a flag in the sand that told us all what we're going to work toward. And then that strategy, we were very clear about our core service areas, our growth plans, where we want to go. And that strategy actually showed me that I didn't have the right organizational structure in place, and I didn't have enough in administrative supports to lift the strategy off the ground. So shortly after that, I restructured me and brought in executive level staff. And honestly, it's been kind of off to the races. Each department has their own strategy, goals, and objectives in furtherance of the main company strategy. And we're kind of all moving in the right direction. We just closed this morning our employee engagement survey so that we can kind of hear from our staff, like, how are we doing? Are we doing okay? What do we got to do better? What needs to be different? So there have been a lot of changes. The organization's been through a lot of transition through COVID. And it really, I think we've kept the core of who we are, but we've had to flex and adapt to think about, like, what is East House today, tomorrow, and into the future.
Kevin, have we ever heard a guest talking about 2040 on this show?
Yeah, I was literally going to say the exact same thing. I was like, 2040? Wow. That's amazing. That's to have that strategic vision for the future with who knows what the heck happens tomorrow. But I think like you put it, Lindsay, and I really loved it, is putting that something in the sand, giving you a target to aim for, other than we're kind of aimlessly working towards these erroneous goals that, yeah, we may hit them, we may not, but let's keep moving forward because that's the only way to do it. How have you gotten how have you gotten your team comfortable with change, right? So you mentioned, hey, we're doing a lot, we're changing a lot, we have this new direction, we have this new vision. How have you gotten them comfortable with that?
Let's see. I don't know that there was intention behind it, right? Like, I think it's about having the right leaders in the right seats on the bus. The people who've been here for a long time were hungry for change. They're like, these are the things we need to change. And that all came out in the strategy process, right? So our managers had feedback, our directors had feedback, our VPs. And so I think that people were hungry for change, but also to know what the common goal is for all of us and how do we move that way together. Some of the leaders have worked, like I mentioned, one worked for me before. Many people here have either worked with me before or worked for me previously. So some people who came to East House after I got here came because they knew that I needed to make change. This is where we're going. These are the things we want to do and be. And they were attracted to that and were up for the work. Mm-hmm. So I've been, honestly, I don't think there's like a secret sauce. I think I'm incredibly lucky. And I think that the team that I have is honestly like a gift every day because they're in it for the right reasons. They have grit. They know that some of the work is a heavy lift, but they all share in the end vision. And they know that let's try it. Let's see. Like, okay, so we might not have done that before, but what do we have to lose? Try it and see what happens, right? So so I think it's about having the right team in place. But it wasn't anything intentional that I said, we have to put this formal change management process. It was just including people in coming up with a shared vision that people felt was important to them and in the community.
Yeah. I just love what you said about that shared vision. I think sometimes that gets lost. It seems like somebody's just making these decisions based off of previous experiences, making certain assumptions towards the future based off past experiences, again, not really including those closest to the problem or valuing those years of service, And I love that. Let's like almost a fail forward approach. Let's just try it, see what we know. We're not going to hit it a 10 out of 10, maybe it's a 7 out of 10, but then it gives us 3 things to work on. That's a really cool way, and viewing your team more as a gift and allowing you that opportunity to move forward. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm very lucky.
I would say so. And Lindsay, I was going to ask you, was there a time in your life that was like extremely like instrumental on preparing you to be a CEO? If you can think back, was there like a certain stretch of your life where you didn't know at the time what was kind of getting you mentally, physically, emotionally ready to lead the charge?
I don't think so, but I will say this, like I am the oldest child and I have a very large family. So it's only me and my brother, but I have 17 cousins on one side and 18 on the other. I am the oldest on one side and I am the oldest female on the other side. So I can't help but wonder if there's like a little bit of bossiness, a little bit of birth order, a little bit of blind luck involved. I don't know that I have a secret sauce, but I think that's kind of it. It's that firstborn.
Okay. And do you feel that you have to carry yourself in a certain way being a CEO?
Yeah. I mean, I don't. I honestly, I am very me always. But to me, the title is not important. I know that the title is meaningful, but the title isn't who I am. And so I clean my own house, I cut my own grass, I walk my own dog, right? I also know, though, that I'm under a microscope and how I treat people and how I conduct myself inside of work and outside of work, you do have to carry yourself different, right? I think that's changed me a little bit. I think it's also surprise because I just thought, well, I just got a new job. And I never say I'm the CEO of East House. I just say I'm like leading an organization. It's really exciting stuff. I don't ever introduce myself as a CEO unless it's in the business world. That's a little bit different. But I do think it was surprising to me when I was announced as CEO. All of a sudden, my Facebook friend request blew up, my LinkedIn blew up, and I was like, who are these people? Why do they care about me? And I think it took some, honestly, I think it took some getting used to. I think, there have been times where I'm like uncertain why someone wants to kind of be a part of my world. And so I think there's still times where sometimes I'm a little more guarded and I'm a little bit like waiting. That really did catch me off guard. I didn't expect it. I just thought, well, I just got this new job. And I don't think I was prepared for being the center of attention. I'm not a limelight person. I'm not a center of attention type of person. And I'm not sure I was prepared for that piece. Right. So always have makeup on, brush your hair, wear a suit, all those things. I kind of knew those things, but I don't think I ever realized that like one wrong comment, one wrong conversation, one stupid decision can change the trajectory of your life and your career.
I'm just envisioning Lindsay mowing her lawn in a suit right now.
Yeah.
That's all. I couldn't get that as soon as you said that. I was like, wow, I wonder what that's like.
Well, now I have a 14-year-old, so I delegate.
Oh yeah, delegate.
I do clean my own house and laundry.
Lindsay, how do you stay so calm? I can smell calm people because I'm not very calm. How do you stay so calm?
I'm not always calm, but this is like a weird thing about me. If I can control it, I don't worry about it because I can control it. If I can't control it, I am not calm, right? So like if a plane is crashing, it'll be fine because I'll figure out how to fly the plane and we'll be fine. But if there is some bad thing that's going to happen that I can't control, that's where I worry. Or if I can't control the outcome of something, I worry. But I try to stay calm because it doesn't do any good worrying. And frankly, honestly, even if the worst thing happened, I got to stay calm because I have 200 plus employees who are looking to me to know, does she got this? Did she have this? Or should we all be concerned? Right. So I might be in knots inside, but I still have to be calm because I have 200 plus employees that are relying on me to get it right.
Don't you just love how creative our minds are when we can think about the worst case scenario of it actually happening and all the way people are going to think about it? And it's like, wait a minute, they're probably thinking about what they want for lunch. Like, did they even notice? Like sometimes I get way ahead of myself too, trying to predict and control the future. I'm like, wait a minute. They don't care at all. I totally messed up. They didn't even notice. Okay. All right. I'm cool with that. I wanted to go back to when you're talking about under a microscope, and you're kind of learning as you go. Your people are giving you maybe some feedback and insights. How do you check yourself, right? Because I think that's what we're all talking about right now, is having that understanding of what it's really like to be in your sphere, let's say, or to work on your team. Lindsay, how do you go and solicit, I guess, those insights from others? What is a trick of the trade, or what have you found helpful to really understand more about what it's like to be working with you? So where you can improve, or maybe what is a strength and what is also a weakness, so you can round out that team to really support you as you move towards this shared vision.
I think it's just the relationships that I have with my direct reports, quite honestly. We give real-time feedback that's pretty honest in the moment, or like behind a closed door, appropriately timed. But we have a team that you don't see magic like this very often, where they do put the hard stuff on the table and they do disagree respectfully. They really and truly, I think it's just the dynamic of the team, but I also think it's that like innate trust that each of us has with each other. I think outside of my team, I have some mentors. I've been very lucky. I have several CEOs that I have known for years, but not in this role, right? That have kind of taken me under their wing, and that I know that if I need to bounce something off, I can. I have mentors who will give me the cold, hard, brutal feedback when I need it. And then I keep my circle very tight, and my family dynamic, like we have the honest conversations. And I've said to one of my best friends, like, if ever I am out of line or it seems like things have gone to my head, you need to call me on that, because that is not who I am or who I want to be. And so I think just inviting the honest feedback that I would give somebody else does make a huge difference, and it keeps me real and grounded.
I love that. But I love how you said it, because I think it's so important, is in the moment. I think if we don't have that conversation or that critical discussion or willingness to give that feedback or feed forward, whatever we want to call it, in the moment is so much more important, because I think over time we then start to get just as imaginary as us being able to predict the future. Our version of the past is just as imaginary. So calling it out in the moment, I think, is so important, to be able to have that level of trust with one another, because then it's like, oh yeah, I did say that. And this is how it came across, and this is how it made me feel. Or I think it's just opening up that dialogue within the moment, instead of building resentment, ultimately, that kind of comes through of these passive aggressive behaviors, which we usually see on teams, because they don't have the trust and their fear of retribution, so that's really cool, that you pointed that out. And especially within the moment, I think is so important of what you said.
Thank you. And it's not, I'm not perfect. I screw up all the time. And I think it's
You and me
fine
both.
as a human, right? But they have to be able to say, like, you really kind of dropped the ball on that one, or that didn't land the way I think you meant it. And then I have to sit and go, wait, but this is what I said. Yeah, but your tone or your approach. And, right. But I can't grow as a leader unless my team holds me accountable for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I always have to constantly be checking my pride and ego, because I notice when my pride enters the room or enters the equation. I've named him Mark, but if my ego enters, it's usually not pretty, because then you shut down, you stop listening, and you're not really hearing what they're saying, and you're getting defensive. And in most cases, I've actually identified I'm defending my old habits and behaviors. It's not even the new version of the new me that I'm living. It's like, why am I defending that? So that's what I've really, really noticed. The more I allow my subconscious to take over my actions, never has done me any favors. So let's just say that.
Yep. I feel every bit of that.
Yeah, I'll never forget the first CEO president I worked for that told us about his failures, made me grow so much. I don't even know how, but I remember it was in Victor. Justin Smith for Bright Computers would just rattle off things he just stunk at that week. And I was like, you stink at stuff too sometimes? And just getting that shield, that wall down, to our whole team. It benefited us a lot, I know. And Lindsay, I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give to someone stepping into an intern CEO role for their first time?
I think I would say that there's going to be an unusual adjustment period that you think you're prepared for, but you're not. There's a point of growth that you won't understand until you're 3/4 of the way through it. Like, you're no longer especially if you get promoted up from your team, you're no longer a part of that team. But guess what? You're also not really a part of your board either. So you're stuck in this place between two worlds that feels sometimes pretty lonely. And you're part of both, but except for when you're not, if that makes sense. And I think things were moving so fast when I was in the interim role, I didn't have time to learn it. But I think now, it was one of the early lessons I learned, right? And I think it is important, because that's part of your own growth process. Is like, what do you mean they don't want to go out to lunch with me anymore? What do you mean they were whispering behind my back? It happens. You're the boss. Sometimes they just plain don't like you or a decision you made, and it's okay. But that's what lonely at the top means.
Mm-hmm. And that's where I love what you said, is like you rounded yourself out with those other mentors, because it can be lonely within that sphere. And I loved how you said it's like a rock and a hard place, it's like you literally these two different worlds, and you find yourself right in the middle of.
And who do you get to vent to, Lindsay? Like to just let it out?
It's interesting. I'm very careful who I vent to. Sometimes it's my husband, but I'm very lucky. I have a coach here at East House that East House is invested in for me. And so she's like the safe party because I don't feel like I can just vent. I feel like I have to do the work. I feel like I have to understand, like, why am I frustrated? Why am I upset? Why do I feel the way I feel? Is this me owning this? Is this the other person's issue? Is this both? Is it something I'm going through, or is it a bunch of little things? And I don't feel like I can just vent, but I feel like I have to be solution focused. Like, why do I feel this way? What am I going to do about it? And is this just what growth feels like? Sometimes it is. Sometimes you get to be angry, but sometimes you kind of have to stuff it because everybody's jobs are hard and everybody has a bad day and they don't want to hear about yours. So I kind of try to keep that safe with my coach and give my best self to my family and friends outside of work.
Love that. And I love what that question that you asked, is this what growth feels like? Because I think I've grown the most when I'm outside my comfort zone, and my comfort zone is fear, right? It's the failure, the fear of failure, falling short of others' expectations of me or my duties and responsibilities. And I think that's really where I've always grown the most. And I think Tyler was the one that helped pull that out, is to really bring that into sight, that it's not about the destination, it's more about the journey itself. And here you are in real time trying to understand and dissect yourself as to, wait, why did I react that way? Is it something, is it a past boss that I haven't even thought about in 25 years, but they're still coming to impact the way I'm reacting to this particular situation or scenario? That's really cool. All right, I guess we got 8 more minutes left. This has flown by. I looked up at the clock. I was like, holy cow, it's already 3:52.
I told you.
Yeah. Put your head down, Lindsay, I have to ask, right? Because I see it and hear it in what you're saying is that busyness, right? The idea of doing nothing like broke my personal computer. Right. It didn't ever add up. I felt terrible if I wasn't doing something with myself or my time. But I then realized how important it was to put on my own oxygen mask first. And I love what you said about the plane. I'll figure it out. I'll run to the front. I'll figure out how to land this thing. That's the same thing I used to say with my oxygen mask. How have you put yourself as a priority on your calendar to ensure that you are the best version of you so you can show up for the best version of your team or for your team?
Well, I laugh because it's that way. A, that's a loaded question, but B, self-care is my area of growth opportunity. I always put my oxygen mask on last, and it's been on every performance review and probably my adult career because I'm a type A. I can have workaholic tendencies. But when I love what I do, I'm all in. And so for me, it's little things, right? Like I promised my 14-year-old I will be at every JV soccer game this season, and I booked it in the calendar. And then I didn't feel guilty because you know what? I'm here by 7:00 most mornings. I can leave at 4:30 or 4 if I need to. Friday, my executive assistant does not book meetings unless they're life or death. So I can work remote, or I could just come in jeans and feel good about like checking stuff off my list. I do love a good spa day, and I love to shop. And quite honestly, I do work on the weekends and I do work a lot of nights, but I've structured my life so that if I get up at 6:00 on a Saturday morning, I make my coffee, I log in for a couple of hours. By the time my world is waking up, I'm done with work. So I feel good about getting things checked off my list, but then I'm focused with my family or friends the rest of the day. And I don't look at, like, I work constantly around the clock, but if I'm on a soccer field and I'm checking an email or responding to an issue, I feel like I can have it all. And I don't necessarily believe in work-life balance for myself because that's not necessarily how I'm wired. But I think and someone said this to me recently, and I was like, yes, brilliant. Work-life integration, right? It's about how do I work in a way that's most efficient for me, where I can still get the things that are important to me. And I won't feel bad at 3:00 on a Friday to leave and go home and like binge watch something dumb on Netflix. Yeah. Or go shopping, or just order a pizza and light a candle and hang out. So I try really hard But I also know that it is an area of growth. It will be until the day I retire. And, and part of it, these jobs are not built for balance. So I say that's a work in progress.
Absolutely. But I love the point that you made. And if I was to summarize, is giving yourself permission to, because I think that's such a big component to what you just said, is like, once you've given yourself permission that this is okay, then that integration or that blend becomes all the more feasible. I think without that permission and guilt, you still feel guilty. And I love your tip about booking the date with yourself, putting it on your calendar, because right now I feel like we're all slaves to our calendar, but if we book that time for ourselves, we usually hold ourselves accountable to the date, because that's something that we just won't miss. That's really cool. Thank you.
I'll let you know when I figure it all out.
Yeah, well, I'll be your accountability partner.
We will too.
Yeah. That is firmly in Kevin's work in progress bucket, which is okay, but that's why I had to ask the question. I didn't know if you had it all figured out yet.
Nope.
Oh, yeah. As my eyelids feel bruised today, just, oh my goodness, is one of those days.
What's your word, Ty, that you keep using?
Unlimited. I'm unlimited, man. And I don't play in a band, and I don't have any wit. Is what I roll with, and I sleep very good at night because of that attitude. Holy smokes! It's like, oh, I'm going down. I was supposed to do some work last night, and it did not get done. I was cashed in, guys. Yeah. But Lindsay, you've been a great guest for us. It's been awesome to meet you. Be sure to tell Drew that Arkansas Tyler said hello when you see him next. And I keep having Michael Douglas' voice in my head going, there's reasons and results is what I have. That's been going on in my head this whole time. So thanks for being a guest. Get out there.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you so much, Lindsay, for all your leadership in the community, and thanks for saying yes. And hopefully this went as swimmingly as you thought it would or wouldn't. I don't know.
Absolutely. It was a little intimidating, but I'm good. So thank you. I appreciate it.